If you can press record, whatever. Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's virtual education program at Cancer Support Community South Bay. I'm Rebecca, the program manager, and I welcome you to this workshop titled Nutrition for Cognitive Function. Before we begin, if this is your first time joining us, CSC South Bay's mission is to ensure that all people impacted by cancer are empowered by knowledge, strengthened by action, and sustained by community so that no one faces cancer alone. We serve the South Bay, Long Beach, and Orange County area all at no cost. Our program includes support groups, networking groups, healthy lifestyle classes, social activities, and educational programs like this workshop. Educational programs are open to all. If you'd like to hear more about our services or join our community, please visit our website at cscsouthbay.org. Before I introduce today's three speakers, we ask you to keep your microphone muted to eliminate any distracting background noise. Please feel free to enter your questions into the chat function found at the bottom of the Zoom window at any time. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our workshop speakers. They're all coming from Create Cures. Create Cures, the Registered Dietitians at Create Cures Foundation. The Create Cures Foundation is a nutrition and longevity clinic based in Santa Monica, California, and provides dietary and lifestyle guidance to support cancer patients throughout their treatment journey. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Rebecca. Just confirming, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So as Rebecca mentioned, my name is Jessica Harrison, Katie Rhines, and Shayna Feinerman are also with us today to talk about cognitive function and specifically around nutrition and lifestyle interventions. As Rebecca mentioned, we are coming to you from the Create Cures Foundation, which is a nonprofit organization. I'll be speaking a little bit more about our services and our offerings at the end. But we do specialize in nutrition specifically for cancer. But today we're going to take a little bit of a step back and talk about a topic that really affects everyone, especially those going through cancer treatment, as well as those in remission from cancer, but also friends, relatives, neighbors who don't have cancer, because we all want to work to support our cognitive function. So today, we're really going to dive into talking about why brain health matters. We'll talk about key factors impacting brain health, evidence-based dietary patterns, what to try to incorporate into your diet, what to avoid. And then we'll talk about longevity diet takeaways, and we will finish with a quiz. And then we're going to try to leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A. So please locate your chat box at the bottom and please try to reserve your questions for the very end when we do move into that Q&A portion, just because it's going to be difficult for us to answer your questions as we're presenting. But we definitely will address your questions at the end, and we'll also include our clinic's email if we didn't have time to get to your question. Okay, so before we begin and start sharing information, I'd love to hear from all of you. Do you think you can improve your cognitive function with nutrition and lifestyle? Please locate your chat box and you can share your answer. Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. Definitely yes. Okay, great. I'm glad that we're all on the same page. Good to know a little bit about the audience and who we're speaking to. The answer is absolutely yes, and we'll be sharing some research to demonstrate the effects of nutrition. Okay, so going into why brain health matters. So of course we use our brain all day, every day, but maybe it's not something that you think about on a daily basis until perhaps there's any sort of cognitive decline. But our brain helps us with perception, attention, memory, nerve function, anxiety, depression, mood, learning, language, emotions. Also, something that's super interesting is it's been linked with chronic pain and chronic symptoms. So I do encourage you to dive into John Sarno and Nicole Sachs's work if you do experience chronic back pain or any sort of chronic body pain, because they relate it to emotions in the brain, which is really interesting. Okay, so looking at why this topic is so important to discuss today, about 1 in 10 adults, 45 years and older, reports worsening memory loss or cognitive decline, and another 1 in 4 reports caring for someone with cognitive impairment. So this is affecting a huge group of people. 13.9% of US adults have a cognition disability with serious difficulty concentrating, remembering, and making decisions. And then more broadly, the global prevalence of cognitive impairment ranges from 5.1 to 41%, which I think it's really important to look at that range, because the discrepancy is due to the different countries reporting different percentages. So you can imagine that maybe the blue zones, the populations of people that live the longest, maybe are closer to the 5.1%, perhaps the people living in the Western world with access to a lot of fast food, not the healthiest lifestyles, might be closer to 41%. And then globally, over 55 million people have dementia, and this number is expected to rise to 152 million by 2050. So this is affecting an enormous amount of people. And yes, social media and just like the rate of consuming the news, our access to our phones, multitasking, these are probably all impacting our ability to focus. But there are more factors. So it really is no surprise that in the Western world, there are higher rates of cognitive decline. And this is because there are higher rates of obesity as well as metabolic disease, including high blood pressure, hyperlipidemia, and diabetes. And then also lifestyle factors that affect cognitive decline: smoking, physical inactivity, excessive alcohol use, and depression. So there are a lot of modifiable risk factors that we're going to touch upon today to help to reduce your risk. Now, Shayna is going to go over chronic disease and how it relates to brain health.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. So excited to talk about this topic with you all. So oftentimes when we think of brain health or cognitive decline, we focus solely on the brain. However, its progression is actually really deeply interconnected with the health of your entire body. So we know now, like Jessica said, there's so many risk factors, and we can really control those with diet and lifestyle. So just to talk about some of these chronic diseases that can actually impact your rate of cognitive decline, one of the first one we want to talk about is type 2 diabetes. So we know that type 2 diabetes is one of the most common metabolic conditions. And just to go over kind of what this is, I know we all have an idea, but type 2 diabetes is characterized by compromised insulin production or utilization. So this is often called insulin resistance. So this often results from excessive carbohydrate or sugar consumption. So it's a lifestyle disease. To regulate your blood sugar levels, our pancreas is actually alerted when your sugar levels go up, or even as soon as we taste something sweet, and it releases that hormone insulin. So then insulin works by signaling to all of our cells to actually uptake that sugar and use it for energy, in turn lowering the concentration in your blood. However, when we're consuming a lot of carbs in excess, two things can actually happen. So the cells might actually start to ignore that insulin signal and fail to absorb that sugar from the blood, and the pancreas becomes exhausted from having to produce too much insulin. And then over time, it no longer can function properly. This is what's called insulin resistance. So this is, again, the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes is an A1C of over 6.5 and a fasting blood sugar of over 126 or more. So how does this actually affect the brain, and why does it contribute to cognitive decline? So when your blood sugar levels are chronically elevated, the sugars actually begin to caramelize onto the proteins in our bloodstream. And this is actually called glycation. So these glycated proteins cause inflammation to our body and can contribute to inflammation, systematic, which can actually damage cells and even the neuronal cells in the brain. So again, this insulin resistance can not only affect just the body, but the brain, meaning that the brain cells cannot uptake glucose, which is their main source of energy, and can starve and then promote brain atrophy. So some research actually does show that this can increase that amount of beta plaques in the brain. but more research is needed to cover that. But more recently, scientists have observed these really close commonalities between type 2 diabetes and specifically Alzheimer's disease. So notably, insulin resistance in the brain has actually been observed in these Alzheimer's disease patients. So as I mentioned before, the insulin resistance can lead to impaired glucose metabolism, meaning that those cells, again, can't properly uptake the glucose, and may lead to actually various common Alzheimer's disease pathologies. So Alzheimer's now has even been labeled kind of as type 3 diabetes after these recent discoveries. So it's very interesting, but more research again is needed to really coordinate that. But how does this translate to your risk and what can we do? So more and more research again is indicating that this type 2 diabetes really increases your rate of cognitive decline. So specifically, to give you guys some research, a recent meta-analysis that covered over 90,000 patients with type 2 diabetes found that they had an increased risk for developing Alzheimer's disease compared to the healthy individuals. So it's really important to mention that, you know, a lot of risk factors for type 2 diabetes are obesity and physical inactivity. And that can also increase your risk for insulin resistance and then directly influence your chances of getting Alzheimer's disease. Another chronic disease that is so common now, but can also really impact your rate of cognitive decline is hypertension. So hypertension, chronic or cardiovascular disease is a really umbrella term for various heart problems. Hypertension is the condition that's has most research behind it when looking at cognitive decline. So this is characterized by impaired blood flow caused by this cardiovascular disease, and that can actually cause impaired nutrient delivery to the brain, as well as reduced oxygen delivery and vascular damage in the brain, which you can imagine can cause significant changes. So how can this elevated blood pressure or elevated glucose really affect the brain? So having specifically elevated blood pressure puts a strain on your blood vessels. So if you think about all that pressure going on in your blood vessels, can create such a strain and even cause vessels in the brain to rupture, increase your rate of stroke too. So this again might contribute to vascular function and then reduce clearance actually of that beta amyloid plaque that we hear a lot about with Alzheimer's specifically. And thus also, you know, if you think about impaired nutrient utilization in the brain can really lead to a lot of inflammation and oxidative stress. And there's actually a type of dementia that is really specifically tailored to these problems. So it's actually called vascular dementia, which is the second most common form of dementia. And I share this information with you not to scare you, but actually really to motivate you that these two specific chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes and hypertension, we can really do a lot in our diet and lifestyle to actually prevent these from happening. And thus we can lower your rate of cognitive decline. So to go over two very, common diets, let's contribute. The Mediterranean diet we've heard a lot about. So this is high in vegetables, whole grains, olive oil, some legumes, nuts, seeds, olives, and it's low in red meat and processed meats. On the other hand, and what we see a lot in America, unfortunately, is the Western diet, which is like low in vegetables, whole grains, and really high in processed meats and red meats, and processed food. So let's compare kind of how each of these affect the brain health. So the Western diet is associated with a lot of metabolic conditions, such as, again, type 2 diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, which again are those risk factors for cognitive decline. So we even know that certain research has come out that processed foods can directly impair your cognitive function, which is crazy. But on the other hand, the Mediterranean diet, which I'm sure we've all heard is a great diet, it's linked to overall better health status, but it's actually also been directly linked to improved brain health and reduced risk for dementia and Alzheimer's. So we'll go into specific details about what these foods and how they actually contribute to brain health, but let's go over some more diets that can help with our brain health. Another really popular diet that's come around is called the MIND diet. So it's short for the Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. Long name, but essentially it's really closely linked to the Mediterranean diet. And it also combines the DASH diet, which is the dietary approaches to stop hypertension. So as you can imagine, again, these chronic diseases are really closely interconnected with each other, and we can really optimize our diet to prevent all of these conditions. So to go over a little bit of the research about the MIND diet, so one paper actually found that closely following the MIND diet reduced your risk of Alzheimer's by 53%, which is very significant. Another study that showed that following the MIND diet just some of the time could reduce your risk by 35%. And that's just not even following it on a day-to-day basis. That's like, okay, sometimes you might have processed food. Still can have such a significant effect. Even more, the MIND diet also decreased your risk of cognitive decline after having a stroke in 106 participants over 5.9 years. So even if you already have had, instances of cardiovascular disease, you can still adhere to this diet and reduce your risk again. So interesting. Let's go into more of these diets. Another one that has recently come about too is the Bredesen protocol. So this was founded by Dr. Dale Bredesen. He was actually the first to formulate an evidence-based protocol that really tackles early stages of Alzheimer's disease and even prevents or even reverses cognitive decline. So he addresses, again, these things are, we're hearing it again, factors like insulin resistance, inflammation, toxic overload, and even more. So again, it's all super interconnected, and really we can, just by diet and lifestyle, we can make such a significant impact. So again, his research is still observational. We need some more randomized controlled clinical trials, but based on, his protocol, that the MIND diet, the Mediterranean diet, they're all very similar. So we know that all these similarities can actually contribute to really improved brain health. And then finally, we at Create Cures actually promote the longevity diet, which is very similar to the other diets like the Mediterranean and the MIND diet, but it's a little bit more specific. So again, it's really maximizing plant-centric meals. So we know that these are the things that are going to give us the most antioxidants and polyphenols to protect our brain. So eating a lot of vegetables, non-starchy vegetables, focusing on complex carbohydrates, focusing on fish, getting some omega-3s to support the brain, anti-inflammatories, also just plant protein, and then again, trying to minimize things like high protein foods, actually, animal products, and added sugars. And we'll go into more details about that. And then another very interesting factor is the gut-brain connection. So there's a lot of research now that shows that our gut and our brain are deeply connected through something called the vagus nerve and our gut microbiome. So something really interesting is that the gut actually produces over 90% of your serotonin, which is that neurotransmitter responsible for your mood, sleep, and your emotional well-being. We know that disruptions in the gut microbiome are actually linked to anxiety, depression, brain fog, and neurodegenerative disease. It's called the second brain because it has over 100 million neurons, which is even more than the spinal cord, which is just crazy and highlights even more that impact of your diet in your brain health. So again, to share a little bit of research about the gut and the brain connection. So people with depression actually have lower levels of a specific bacteria that produces anti-inflammatory compounds. There's a specific gut bacteria called Akkermansia, which has been shown to, if you have high levels of that, it actually can improve your effectiveness of your cancer immunotherapy. And then again, multiple studies have actually linked probiotic foods like kimchi, miso, and yogurt to improved sleep quality, which is very important. And at Create Cures, we talk a lot about the fasting mimicking diet, which is essentially, it's a 5-day fasting mimicking diet. So you're consuming foods, but you're putting your body in a state of fasting. So it's a 5-day diet, and there's actually been a lot of studies on this in people with, these chronic conditions and improving brain health. So we know that FMD cycles, which is the fasting mimicking diet, can actually reduce cognitive decline in Alzheimer's disease pathology. This is done in mouse models. We know that the FMD cycles can decrease your hippocampal microglia number and neuroinflammation. So as we can confirm, Alzheimer's disease and just cognitive decline, again, we can think a lot about inflammation. So it's so interesting that diet and even this fasting mimicking diet might be able to decrease that inflammation in our brain. And also the studies show that it has been safe and effective. So what are some nutrition interventions that have been shown to be beneficial for cognitive decline? So what diet do you remember? What resonated with you guys? Let's see it in the chat box. Anyone can remember a diet? Forward diets, Mediterranean diet. Yeah, totally. Awesome. Great. Mind diet. Yeah. All right. So now let's go into exactly what are these lifestyle patterns that can actually influence your cognitive function. So when we think of having healthy lifestyle factors, we think of hydration, exercise, sleep, stress management, socialization, and also learning new things. So these all have such a significant impact in the development of our brain and keeping it really healthy. So the body is made up of 60% water. So we know that water is essential for brain cell communication, it clears toxins, and it maintains our overall brain health. So just like the cells in all over your body need water, so does your brain. So adequate hydration supports brain plasticity. It supports the brain's ability to adapt and change in response to experiences, as well as really facilitating new skills. So even if you think about if you're going to take a test or reading a book, drinking water can actually help you understand and learn new things even better. So water, again, clears toxins and waste products from the brain. It supports proper blood flow and oxygen delivery to the brain, which is, again, essential for optimal cognitive function. Exercise. So exercise is getting a lot of recent research about how it can actually impact our brain health. So regular movement, it reduces inflammation in your body. It actually improves your brain function and enhances your overall metabolic health. So again, trying to, reduce your risk of type 2 diabetes or even hypertension. So exercise stimulates what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which supports memory and learning. So actually, if you do strength training, if you do squats or lunges, strength training your legs, because these are really large muscles, can actually produce the largest amount of this brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And again, similar to water, movement again increases your ability to flush out toxins, boost your immunity, and improve your mood. So we recommend about 150 plus minutes of exercise weekly, as well as 2 to 3 strength training sessions per week to maintain healthy muscle mass. And then sleep. So sleep is critical for your brain health. It helps with consolidating your memories for learning and problem solving. So I'm sure we all have experience on days where we have poor sleep. It almost feels like your brain is super foggy the next day, because we know that the brain removes toxins. It actually has something called the lymphatic system. So when you sleep, your brain literally flushes. So we need that time to do this, or otherwise poor sleep can actually be linked to cognitive decline, impaired focus, and increased risk of these neurodegenerative diseases. So really try to get over 6 hours of sleep, because this is really crucial to get this system going. And then one of the big things that we can all probably work on is stress management. And just we know that stress can actually impair your prefrontal cortex, which is that part of the brain that's really responsible for things like decision making and attention. So also social interaction. So it's really important to see your friends, have socialization. This can actually strengthen your neural network in your brain. And then active social lives have actually been linked to a 38% reduction in your risk of developing dementia. So also try to do learning every day, pursue a new skill, participate in group activities, and stay curious. This can actually really impact the cells in your brain, that connectivity. And now I'm going to pass it on to Katie to teach us more about like what foods can actually prevent cognitive decline.
Yay! Thank you so much. I'm really excited to dive in. We are clear on what patterns, what diets could be helpful. Let's get to the nitty-gritties. What foods should we really be including most days to make sure we're protecting our brain health? The most abundant fatty acid in the brain, DHA. What foods can help with our DHA? Did you know that long-term users of omega-3 fatty acid supplements, so omega-3s, those are the precursors to us creating this DHA, this incredible fatty acid that helps with our brain. Long-term users of the omega-3 fatty acid supplements had a 64% reduced risk for Alzheimer's disease. And this was over 100,000 participants in 48 longitudinal studies. I know somebody is going to ask, hey, what supplements should we be taking? Here's a big one. A DHA and EPA supplement is recommended most days of the week to take that. Each increment of 0.1 grams per day of DHA or EPA intake was linked to between an 8% and a 9.9% lower risk for cognitive decline. Okay, Katie, do we have to take supplements to get this? Not necessarily. There are fantastic sources that you can get in whole food form from your diet. I recommend everybody take in those plant-based sources of omega-3s because these are also a great source of fiber. Recommend 2 to 4 tablespoons daily of either ground flax seeds, soaked chia seeds, and make sure your flax seeds are ground. Make sure your chia seeds are soaked, or else you're going to see them come out the other end. You're not going to absorb. It doesn't matter what we're eating, it matters what we are absorbing. So soaking those chia seeds for at least 5 minutes, I would say, in some water or whatever unsweetened beverage of choice, and ground flax seeds, hemp seeds, and walnuts. And a plant-based sourced supplement is an algae-derived DHA EPA supplement rather than fish oil. Usually you'll see a fish oil supplement. Algae-derived ones are fantastic as well. And as Shayna mentioned, the longevity diet and a Mediterranean diet, it's quite low in meat and animal products. However, there are some servings of fish included. So we do recommend the acronym SMASH for choosing your fish. These are the higher in DHA fish and lower in mercury and heavy metals. And that acronym SMASH, it stands for sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring. But we only recommend 4 ounces. That's about the size of a deck of cards. It's quite a small amount. 4 ounces, just 2 to 3 times a week can provide you that DHA to help with brain health. So be sure to get in those sources of DHA and EPA, all right? It's a big one. And when it comes to the DHA and what I'm about to get into, I just personally am nerdy about these things, and I think it's fascinating learning about the doctrine of signatures. I don't think it's a coincidence that walnuts look exactly like a brain, and they happen to be very good for our brain. So if you're looking for a snack, maybe a handful of walnuts can really help with your brain health. If you look at the other side of the purple cabbage, it really does look like a brain stem and all the neural networks in the brain. The cauliflower, lion's mane mushroom. Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence. We can continue. All right, carotenoids, lutein and zeaxanthin. There's a lot of substantial research on this. So when it comes to lutein and zeaxanthin, okay, what is this gibberish, right? These are plant pigments. These are yellow and orange pigments in our vegetables and fruits. So carotenoids like beta carotene is that orange color, okay? They just have these different colors. Our bodies cannot make these. We need to take them in from our diet. And fascinatingly, it's been shown that people who have more plant pigments in their bloodstream also have more white matter and better white matter integrity. This snapshot graph that I have here, this is a very, very brief, this is in milliseconds of people's brains reacting. So they did a bunch of different tests, testing people's ability to stay focused and not get distracted, people's ability to find things, like find certain words amongst a bunch of different letters, that type of thing. And with this snapshot of a brain reaction, it's interesting that in general, the older adults with high, that's macular pigment, is it ocular density? Optical density, something like that. So the pigment of lutein and zeaxanthin around their optic nerves, those with more pigment looked more like they were able to respond more like younger adults than the older adults with less pigment. And as time went on, this was actually really interesting, showing that mm, if you start young, if you start eating more colors in your diet young, when before you turn 20, I think it was, then as time goes on, you're going to still have better white matter integrity. However, it's not too late to start now to make sure that you're getting in plenty of different colors in your diet, um, so that as you continue to age, you're going to protect that white matter, protect your brain health. And thinking about that, okay, what are food sources of yellow and orange? Fascinatingly, it's not just the carrots, right? It's not just the yellow foods. Actually, greens, dark green leafies like kale, spinach, these dark green vegetables, they do turn yellow when they start to get old in the fridge. You'll notice they start to turn yellow. And so that tells us that not only that dark green pigment called chlorophyll is present in the leaf, also these other lutein and zeaxanthin, these yellows, these oranges, these reds, um, just like how in the fall, maybe not so much in Southern California, but up north in the fall when the leaves change color, they go from green to red to yellow to orange because you were seeing all these different pigments that are in the leaves. So be sure every single day, I recommend upwards unlimited amount really of green leafy vegetables. It's going to help you get in all of these different antioxidants and all of these different plant pigments that can help protect our brain. Okay. Also, very, very neat. If anyone has heard of Ayurvedic medicine, where they use the chakra system, where the meridians of the body have these different colors coordinated with them. And interestingly, in Ayurvedic medicine, in the chakra system, to improve brain function and brain health, it's recommended to eat purple foods, purple, this dark red color. And I think it's absolutely fascinating that research has come out showing that this purple pigment, that's called anthocyanin. That's the color in red cabbage, red onions, blueberries, beets, cherries, these dark, dark purple red vegetables and fruits. These have been shown to really help with cognitive function and prevent Alzheimer's. The anthocyanins have been shown to be able to cross the blood-brain barrier. So this blood-brain barrier, it's got to be a really important protective shield to protect the brain. That blood-brain barrier is only going to let in supportive things. And these colors, these dark purple colors, can cross that blood-brain barrier, assisting in brain regions involved in learning and memory. Fascinating. A 12-week study showed that older adults with mild to moderate dementia saw significant improvements in verbal fluency and short and long-term memory after drinking 6.6 ounces of cherry juice each day. Cherry juice that has that dark, dark color again. So be sure to eat those anthocyanin-rich purpley red. I recommend blueberries every day, you know, half a cup of blueberries, make sure to get those colors, right? More documented berry benefits. I'll try to go through this quickly. Berries, they've been shown to delay brain aging by 2.5 years, improve paired associate learning and wordless recall, improved cognitive performance across all measures, consistent with the dose response model with the best performance following 30 grams. And 30 grams of, that's WBB, that's whole blueberry, that's only about a quarter cup. A quarter cup of blueberries can be significantly beneficial. Berries have been shown to effectively reverse ROS, reactive oxygen species. These are basically inflammatory compounds. Reactive oxygen species are what cause oxidative stress and inflammation. Berries can reverse by this protocatechuic acid. There's a lot of different types of acids, enzymes, and polyphenols and antioxidants in berries. This just happens to be one of them that can help to reverse these inflammatory factors. It's a main metabolite of blueberry extract. And then lastly, effectively improve neuroinflammation. Just like I mentioned before, how the anthocyanin can cross the blood-brain barrier, and they've been shown to help with learning and memory deficits in mice, could be a potential therapeutic agent for Alzheimer's disease. Okay, I'm going to talk more about berries later on. Okay, flavanol sources. When it comes to flavanols, it's very interesting to think about what are some sources of caffeine, right? So green tea, yes, it has caffeine. It also has L-theanine, theobromine. Yeah, there's this compound called EGCG that's a powerful, powerful antioxidant. Of course, it is green. It has that green color pigment. 2019 systematic review, green tea intake might reduce the risk for dementia, Alzheimer's disease, mild cognitive impairment, or significant cognitive impairment. This was a huge review. When it comes to green tea, there's a lot of factors that play here. And no, I'm going to explain other flavanol sources like cacao and coffee as well. Matcha is great because you're actually drinking the leaf, you're actually consuming that green leaf versus just the water of the leaf. It's amazing that just the water of the leaf is so beneficial. And if you can actually eat it as well with the matcha powder, some high quality matcha powder, that's how I recommend that you consume green tea. It's going to be the most antioxidants. Next flavanol source, cacao. So just like I said before, how green tea has caffeine and theobromine, these other compounds, cacao has a symphony of incredible compounds. Yes, including a little bit of caffeine, not as much as green tea or coffee, but also, yes, theobromine. It's also a good source of magnesium, a great source of iron. And when it comes to brain health, there's a lot of research on these flavonoids, these flavanols in cacao being beneficial. Among adults aged 50 to 69, those taking a cocoa supplement with high flavanol content for 3 months had better performance on tests of memory than those assigned to take a low flavanol cocoa supplement. So this goes to show there's a big difference between a really cheap milk chocolate, candy bar versus a really, at least I would recommend at least 85% dark chocolate, making sure it's well sourced, or just sticking with cocoa powder or cacao powder. And maximum maybe 2 squares a day, 2 tablespoons of powder a day. You could make a warm beverage with that. You could put it in a smoothie or in your oatmeal or something like that. Rather than having saying, oh, my dietitian told me candy was good for me. That's not what I'm saying. All right. And then lastly, when it comes to flavanol sources, coffee. Fascinating. There's a lot, just like with green tea and cacao, there's a lot of different compounds that we could talk about here. In this particular study, coffee extracts were shown to be significantly effective at lowering the concentration of BCHE, which catalyzes the hydrolysis of the important nervous system neurotransmitter acetylcholine. So acetylcholine, this is really going to help our brain and our nervous system to interact with the rest of the body, all right? When it comes to this enzyme, which basically promotes the breakdown of this neurotransmitter, coffee was able to inhibit that from happening and basically protect our nervous system function. So a lot of people come to me, oh no, I know I need to stop drinking coffee. Hey, there's actually a lot of beneficial compounds in coffee. It's actually really rich in a lot of antioxidants. Definitely the highest out of those three that I'm talking about in caffeine. So be sure to stop drinking around 11 a.m. And you know yourself best. There's a lot of variation in our ability to metabolize caffeine. Some people can metabolize it just fine and sleep perfectly at night. And some people, it causes the jitters, it causes racing, and they're not able to sleep. So be mindful of that. And lastly, I highly recommend a light roast versus a dark roast. Light roast coffee actually has more beneficial compounds present than a dark roast. Okay. Ooh, the mushrooms. Mushrooms have been shown to have so many benefits. If you can get your hands on whatever mushroom, white button mushroom, cremini mushroom, I highly recommend it. The benefits are endless. However, when it comes to specifically cognitive function, there's a lot of research on lion's mane mushroom being beneficial. These two compounds in lion's mane, I don't think I can pronounce those correctly, hiricinions and iricin, I don't know how to pronounce them. Two compounds in lion's mane shown to stimulate the growth of brain cells. Oh, here we are. Sorry, I dipped out for a second. So that's amazing that lion's mane can stimulate the growth of brain cells. When it comes to getting lion's mane in, a lot of you might be thinking, what the heck, I've never seen that before, or where am I supposed to buy this? A common, easy way to get in lion's mane is through a fruiting body powder. You can buy it as a supplement. You can get it in a capsule form or a powder form. And in research, it's a lot easier to do with a capsule. So 350 milligram lion's mane capsules daily for 49 weeks, so almost a year, in patients with Alzheimer's disease demonstrated significantly higher, these are a bunch of different cognitive function scores, achieved a better contrast sensitivity in patients with mild Alzheimer's disease. So contrast sensitivity, that's our ability to see at night and notice different colors, which is interesting how the retina is actually a gateway to our brain health. It's fascinating how connected those are. So they also tested this contrast sensitivity, and it was significantly better in those who took the lion's mane mushroom supplement, suggesting lion's mane is safe, well tolerated, and may be important in achieving neurocognitive benefits. All right, I'm going to try to hurry this up here. Yes, oxidative stress. So it's really easy to see from these graphs that lion's mane mushroom powder has the potential to lower this inflammation in the brain. But yeah, we can move on. Not get into much detail. And then just like Shayna mentioned about gut health, there was this incredible double-blind randomized controlled trial where the intervention group took a probiotic and a prebiotic. So prebiotic in the form of inulin. What is prebiotic? That's just fiber. And fiber you're only going to find from plant foods. There's no fiber in meat, dairy, eggs, and animal-based sources. So fiber is literally the cell wall of a plant cell, right? So probiotic plus prebiotics versus a placebo that didn't take this. And the intervention group that took the probiotic and the prebiotic showed significant improvements in attention, cognitive flexibility, and executive function, right? How did this happen? How is it that this probiotic and prebiotic was able to help so much? The way it works is that when our beneficial bacteria in our gut chews on and eats up the fiber that we eat, the beneficial bacteria creates basically poops out. I don't know exactly how it works, but our beneficial bacteria is able to make short chain fatty acids, if you've heard of acetate or butyrate. And just like anthocyanins, that red purple color can cross the blood-brain barrier, these short chain fatty acids, thanks to our healthy gut microbiome, can also cross the blood-brain barrier to help decrease inflammation. And they did measure inflammation. They measured, and it was clear that there was a decrease in cytokines, these pro-inflammatory cytokines. So our body upregulates these cytokines to signal, hey, let's get some inflammation going, right? And there was a clear decrease in that thanks to these short-chain fatty acids from our healthy gut microbiome, thanks to the probiotic and prebiotics that can really, really help to nourish our microbiome, right? So with this study, it's very much recommended to eat a high fiber diet. Let's open up the chat box. What is one food you're going to include to improve cognitive function? Ooh, I'm seeing a lot of questions. Definitely be sure to ask these questions at the end. Lion's mane, red cabbage, green tea. Yes, berries. And then getting in all of these won't hurt. All right, I recommend eating all of these. And did anyone say greens? Make sure to get in your greens, okay? Foods to avoid. I'll try to breeze through this really quickly, okay? Foods high in saturated fat. High saturated fat diets have been shown to increase brain markers of inflammation. Very interesting study, even with a high fat diet, comparing a high fat diet to a high fat diet that includes blueberries. The high fat diet with blueberries were shown to mitigate the negative effects of a high fat diet. So, hey, if you're going to have some cheese or some red meat, make sure to have some berries in your diet that day also, all right? But in general, I recommend avoiding the red meats, avoiding the cheeses. Even coconut oil and coconut products are really high in saturated fat, so we don't want to eat too much of those either, okay? Refined carbohydrates. As you can see from this image, what is a refined carbohydrate? Those are what the white. Dr. Furman said it, the whiter the bread, the sooner you're dead. Let's try to get whole grain products and maybe not even getting products. Is it possible to eat the whole quinoa, maybe it's oatmeal or brown rice instead of these processed baked goods and products, okay? Chronic consumption of refined carbohydrates has been linked to relative neurocognitive deficits across the lifespan. However, whole grains like quinoa, millet, brown rice, as seen in the Mediterranean diet and in the MIND diet, have conversely shown to be related to improved cognitive function because they're so high in fiber, right? We really need to improve our gut microbiome. So I'm not saying to not eat whole grains or not eat grains. We're saying to eat ones that contain more fiber, okay? We're wanting to avoid AGEs, as you can see in red on the right, a diet which consists of processed foods like cheese, breads, and foods with high temperature cooking, like grilling, baking, are rich sources of advanced glycation end products. So if you burn your toast, throw it away. If it's grilled, if it's blackened, if it has any black on it, throw it away. And this is why seed oils, we all should be avoiding seed oils. It's because they're heated at such a high temperature and probably rancid and probably creating reactive oxygen species. It's important that our oils are cold pressed and it's really delicate. They can become rancid. But yeah, of course, it depends on the oil. It depends on a lot of different things. But in general, making sure that most of the time you're eating foods that are raw. Moist heat cooking methods, I recommend. Soups are great. Steaming, boiling, versus things like yeah, baking, toasting, frying, grilling, anything that might cause your food to burn. That's going to create that reactive oxygen species. So we want to avoid those. Okay. Foods to include smashed fish, ground flax seeds, soaked chia seeds, hemp seeds, or walnuts. Be sure to eat your greens at least 1 cup a day. Berries, green tea, cacao, coffee, and lion's mane mushroom. And then foods to avoid: red meat and high-fat meats, cheese, high-fat dairy products, fried foods, butter, mayonnaise, margarine, white sugar, white flour, sweetened beverages, and we want to avoid fruit juice that's quite high in sugar, charred, blackened, or burned foods, and of course, alcohol, let's avoid as well. What is one food you're going to avoid to optimize cognitive function? Nice, white bread. Pasta, sad face. Some pastas, I know there's good like edamame pasta, there's good lentil pastas or whole grain pastas. You don't need to necessarily avoid all pasta. Fried foods, great animal protein. Fantastic. Thank you all for paying attention. And I'm going to pass it to Jessica to wrap it up.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you so much, Shayna, for sharing all of that information. Super helpful and so many actionable items in terms of choices that you can make on a daily basis to support your brain health. So just to summarize everything that we've already shared, supporting your brain health, yes, nutrition has a big impact, but really taking a 360 approach and focusing on your overall lifestyle is what's going to be most effective. So we want to follow a balanced longevity diet, essentially a little bit more specific Mediterranean diet, being mindful of overall protein and making sure that you include fish. We want to stay hydrated. We want to try to get 60 minutes of light movement a day, as well as 20 to 30 minutes of low impact muscle conditioning to maintain healthy muscle mass, 20 to 30 minutes of daily brain stimulating activities, 7 to 8 hours of sleep, managing stress, and socialization. And all of that is really included in the longevity lifestyle that we promote at the clinic. This right here is a summary of the longevity diet, which Shayna already reviewed. Okay, so another question for all of you. Are there other health promoting behaviors besides just eating healthily that could help prevent cognitive decline? We'll see if you were paying attention. Exercise, yes. Emotional wellness, decreased stress, social connection. Yes, of course, all of these. Really wonderful. Okay, so that we already reviewed. Going back to the foods that support brain health. So what are 3 foods that you're going to include in your diet to support your brain health? Berries, greens, mushrooms, lion's mane, cacao, green tea, walnuts. Yes, definitely. Coffee, sardines. Love all of these foods. What are 3 foods that you want to avoid? So I know that you all just mentioned one, but let's see if we can think about 3. White bread, grilled foods, sugar, French fries, alcohol, white bread, burnt foods. Yes, exactly. Well done. Okay, so just as a reminder, we are all coming to you from the Create Cures Foundation Clinic. Our clinic is based in Santa Monica, but we're able to see patients all over the country, and we have a sister clinic in Italy that's able to see patients all over the world. So we definitely are here to support you. We offer annual programs that allow us to work one-on-one with our patients so that we can monitor progress, and this is especially helpful for patients currently undergoing cancer treatment, but we also absolutely work with people in remission, as well as those maybe who are at an increased risk of cancer or just they're just looking to promote healthy habits and longevity. We offer 4 different programs that essentially vary in terms of our team's commitment to your particular case. We even include the opportunity to work directly with Dr. Longo. So if this is something that you're interested in or you're looking for that one-on-one support, I do recommend that you reach out to the clinic. The email address is right here. It's clinic@createcures.org. And this is our website. Feel free to check out the website. You could learn a little bit more about our approach, our services, Dr. Longo and his research. And also, I encourage you to look at our YouTube channel. So this is just one of our many, many webinars. We've partnered with the cancer support community for quite a while. So we've done a lot of webinars together. And then the clinic has done our own webinars as well. And here are our references. Okay, I know we started a little bit late, so we'll take a couple of minutes now to answer questions. So if you have any questions that you want us to answer, please pop them in the chat box and we will answer. Oh, good question about just the Create Cures and insurance. So we're a nonprofit organization and we work to make our services as accessible as possible. So although we don't directly accept insurance, we do offer a sliding scale fee for those who qualify based on income. So if that's something that you're interested in applying for to see if you do qualify for the discount, please contact the clinic. The email address is here on the screen as well, clinic@createcures.org, and we can provide a super bill. So we really want to work with you in whatever capacity that
Could
means.
I answer the question about cherries?
Yeah, go for it.
So I definitely would recommend to not drink juice. I know in a lot of these trials and they're trying to make it easy to do a placebo versus a intervention group, and it's just easier to put something in a cup without them being able to see what the liquid is. But in general, it's going to be a lot better to avoid fruit juice and uh, reach for the whole cherries. Okay, it's a great question.
I saw a question about breakfast. So breakfast is the most important meal of the day. It helps regulate your hormone levels and your cortisol first thing in the morning. So we do encourage breakfast, and we want a balanced breakfast, so something that is not too sugary. So really aiming for more maybe of a savory breakfast or something that includes a protein, fat, and ideally fiber as well. So yeah, breakfast is very important just to make sure, again, we're optimizing our blood sugar levels and not increasing the risk for type 2 diabetes.
Maria asked about if we could speak more about seed oils. So seed oils is definitely a controversial topic. It's in the media quite a bit these days. As Katie mentioned, they are heated to really high levels, often being stored in plastic bottles for many years, exposed to heat in those plastic bottles. So like maybe the oil's rancid, also maybe you're getting that plastic exposure. And then another element is that normally chemical extractants are used for seed oils because if you think about it, the seeds aren't super fatty. If you think about like avocado or oil or olives, they're very, very rich in fat. So you can imagine how they could very easily be essentially like juiced or squeezed into oils, whereas seeds don't have that kind of fat available. So a lot of industrial companies are using chemicals like hexane to extract the oil, which is not going to be included on the label because of different regulations. They don't have to declare that, but it is typically used in the process and is not a great chemical to ingest in your body.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, I love that question. And it's just interesting going, if you go to Spain or Italy, they snack on olives and they snack on anchovies. You know, they're not snacking on chips and things cooked in canola oil and all these things. So we're a little bit overdoing it with the inflammatory fats out here. Can the brain damage be reversed in patients that are starting with the effects of brain damage? This is tough to say because it depends how much damage has been done. In general, nerve function and nerve health takes the longest to reverse. When it comes to something like peripheral neuropathy and wanting to reverse that type of damage, it can take upwards of a year or maybe 3 years, right? And I've seen miracles happen, and I think it's worth a try to do what we can to support this damage that's been done. And there's a lot of different types of brain damage. I don't know if it's a concussion. I don't know if it's like more nerve situation. But I want to say that it's going to be important to I think I saw a couple of questions like this, some very specific questions. Please send us a message. I would love to get more clear on the type of brain damage that you're talking about and how far along you are to really see if we can come up with a plan versus me just, I have no clue what's going on. So if you have any specific questions about how to improve your specific situation, don't hesitate. That's what we do, but it's hard for me to just answer, right?
Thank you so much, Katie. I think that that's a good place to end. If you have any additional questions that we didn't get to, and especially if you're curious to get support with your particular case, please email the clinic@createcures.org, and we'll get back to you. And also, if you're interested in working with us, if you're interested in applying for the sliding scale discount, please contact. And thank you for the cancer support community for having us present.
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful presentation.